So actually I'll just start. You're all very welcome. It's great to see you all coming in again. And if you're watching on our YouTube channel, thank you for tuning in and joining us for our final session. I can't believe we're at week 6 already of our webinar series, Breaking the Pain Cycle. And with us tonight, we have Laura Cahill and Peter from Arthritis Ireland, Peter Boyd. And me, you probably know me at this stage, services manager with Arthritis Ireland. So just the usual, just we're the national charity for Arthritis Ireland in the country. And, you know, the idea is that we're the go-to for all things arthritis, hopefully. And we deliver support, training, education and information. And as always, I'll direct you to the helpline. So if any queries or questions or concerns or, you know, wanting to find out more about arthritis or more about what we do or more what's about available, that's our helpline number. And Peter, I'll be delighted to hear from you. Okay, so as usual, the webinar is being recorded, and if you have any interest in slides or anything that's coming up, feel free to take a screenshot or take a photograph so you can use it again for your own reference. And the YouTube will have the recording up next week, probably tomorrow actually, and the link will be sent out to you next week as well. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say for that part. So it's great to see everybody here, and it's been quite a journey over the last 6 weeks, all things pain and pain related with arthritis. So, you know, looking at the boom and bust and looking at, you know, the medication, and then we went on to exercise and healthy eating. And, you know, we were looking at getting our heads right with our mental health last week. So it's been, you know, a lot covered in quite a short time. And hopefully you are getting the benefit from that and getting a bit of an appetite now to learn more or engage more with us, or you know, take on the challenge of maybe a new program, or, you know, signing up for something with Arthritis Ireland, maybe you haven't done before, or maybe you have before and would like to re-engage, which is brilliant. So as I say, tonight's session really is about wrapping it up, recapping, looking at pain and living our best quality of life in spite of pain. And that's where we have Laura with us, and Laura is a psychotherapist at DCU and also lives with chronic pain. And so Laura's going to have the task of tying it together and you know, bringing us to a place where we can move forward and live our best lives. And, you know, I'm going to shut up for now, and I'm going to hand you over to Laura. And as I say, if there's any questions or anything, you know, the questions and answers box there at the bottom of the screen, pop in your question, and we'll do our best to get to them and answer them for you. Okay, so bye-bye for now and enjoy. Thank you. That's over to you, Laura.
So hello, and thank you, Peter and Martina, for inviting me to give this talk or this workshop. So my name is Laura Cahill, and I'm a psychotherapist at DCU, and I also have a private practice in Glasnevin. And over a decade now, I have worked with people who live with a chronic pain condition or with chronic illness. So before we start, I'll tell you a little story. So I started my career as a relationship counselor. And one day I saw this new couple, and the lady told me that she had osteoarthritis and I think fibromyalgia, and she had another number of diagnoses. So at the time, I didn't know what to do with that. So I just got on with focusing on the relationship. And then a few weeks went by, and as their relationship improved, the lady also reported that her pain was better and that she could sleep better. And then later, she also told me that she used the communication skills that she learned in therapy with her consultant, and how much more understood she felt by him. So this got me really excited and curious about how our relationships and communication skills and sleep can influence pain. And when I had other clients with similar experiences, I decided to study and research the science behind pain and this whole mind-body connection. So today's plan is to recap what the previous speakers have talked about over the past few weeks and to bring together all the aspects of dealing with arthritis and chronic pain. So just to give you an overview, we'll start by looking at where does pain come from? How does acute pain become chronic? We'll talk about the types of pain and related treatments. Why is pain different for everyone? Why is it that some people live well with arthritis and others struggle with any sort of long-term condition, for example, with arthritis? And then I'll also be giving you some tips on how you can be the one who lives well with arthritis and with chronic pain. So where does pain come from? It sounds like a silly question, doesn't it? If you look at that poor child who fell on his nose, obviously his pain is coming from his nose. But then why is it that sometimes when a child has a nasty looking fall, they just get up and continue playing as if nothing had happened? And then other times, even if they only have a little fall with no visible injuries, they can have a complete meltdown and cry in pain. So let's look at the biology behind pain. So first, when that child had a fall, sensory nerve endings in his nose detected that something was off. So those sensory nerve endings do not detect pain, but they detected that there was a mechanical input. Then this signal from this child's nose went to the spinal cord and through the peripheral nervous system. And then from the spinal cord, it went up to the brain. Now, the brain then uses multiple areas to interpret the location of the stimulus in the body. And the brain also looks at what's happening around the child. Is mom panicking? Or is she just telling me that, oh, I'm a big boy, I should get through this? Is there blood? What are my friends doing around me? Are they laughing? What's happening? And the brain also looks into our old memories and as well as our current emotions. So if the child had their nap, if their belly is full, if they need a nappy change, and it translates all this information into one basic question. Am I in danger or am I in potential danger? And if the brain then perceives that that child is in danger or in potential danger, the brain then talks to the spinal cord, and then the spinal cord can modulate what kind of pain signal goes back to the child's nose. So you can see that the amount of pain experienced doesn't correlate very well with the degree of tissue damage. And there was some really interesting research done on this topic. So there was one research, I think it was in 2013, where they looked at asymptomatic people, so generally healthy, active research participants who had no previous knee injury or no knee pain. And they put those people into MRI machines. And what was found is that 43% of over 40-year-olds had osteoarthritis on the MRI in the knee. And these people didn't feel any pain. There's also research that apparently a third of people who had joint replacements still had pain, chronic pain after the joint replacement. And one of my favorite research is that that research concluded that 15% of people with full knee replacement still had moderate to severe pain in their knee joints. So these people felt pain, felt real excruciating pain in the metal knee. So I think that is really, really interesting. So if you look at this table, you can see 5 possible different scenarios. So let's look at it from the top. So if you look at the top left corner, let's take a generally healthy, active, working person. The poor unfortunate person might have a fall and they really hurt their ankle, and it's very difficult to stand on that ankle. It hurts, so they go to the hospital. The doctor sends them for an x-ray, and on the x-ray they see that that ankle is broken. The person then gets maybe a cast, and after about 6 weeks, when they have a follow-up x-ray, the x-ray shows that the fracture has healed. They might need some physio, but they're generally, healthy again, and they can return to all their previous activities without any pain. So they're healthy again. That is the ideal scenario. Now take another person, again, generally healthy. They have exactly the same accident, exactly the same fracture on the x-ray, they see exactly the same doctor, they get exactly the same type of cast, they have exactly the same looking follow-up x-ray showing that the fracture has healed, but they're still in pain and they might be still limping. That's called chronic primary pain. So when the fracture or when the initial injury has already healed, but the person still feels real pain, that's chronic primary pain. Now, if you move on to the third line, again, take a generally healthy, active person, but this person is a bit more unfortunate. They might be involved, let's say, in a car crash, or I don't know, they have a serious, maybe sports injury. So they have a bit more complex fracture on the, let's say, on the ankle, and they might even need an operation. The recovery might take a little bit longer as well. But then eventually, after about 12 weeks, they get an x-ray, and the x-ray shows that even that complex fracture has healed. The doctor tells them that because, you know, it was a very complex fracture, there's still long-term structural damage in the body. So you mightn't be able to fully return to your previous activity levels, but you can still be active, do sports, go back to work. That person might have chronic secondary pain. So chronic secondary pain is when there is a structural damage, or there's a medical reason why the person still feels pain. Usually these people are the ones who live well with pain. So they're not in constant pain, but maybe when they overdo it occasionally, then they get a flare up. Then occasionally they rely on some medication, but they generally live well, they're active. Maybe they won't run marathons anymore, and they might play tennis or any golf, but they're generally, you know, fine. Now take another person with exactly the same complex ankle fracture, exactly the same doctor, exactly the same operation, and after, let's say, 12 weeks follow-up, the doctor again sees that, well, the fracture has healed, but there is some structural damage left over, and they advise the person that, well, you can still be active, but maybe don't run marathons or don't do any strenuous sports. But that person after 12 weeks is still in pain, is still in a lot of pain, and they cannot do any sports. And they go back to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, there's not that much that I can do. And, you know, the classic line, the pain might be in your head. So this is when chronic secondary pain and chronic primary pain is combined. And then there's a third, or there's the fifth, our fifth potential patient who doesn't have any illness or any injuries, but they notice that they have this niggle at some part of their body, maybe their lower back, or, you know, maybe in their shoulder, and it just doesn't go away. And they go to the doctor, and there doesn't seem to be any major damage in the joints, but they're still in pain, and they're real pain. And often they're in debilitating pain that can go on for not just 12 weeks, but months and years, and they don't actually know what is wrong with them, in inverted commas. So that's when a person is in chronic primary pain. So why is it that some people end up living with chronic primary pain and others don't? Well, the current research says that it's our predisposition. So that means that the biopsychosocial factors that seem to make changes in our brain and in our nervous system. And this is the reason why we might feel chronic primary pain. So again, it's real pain. And yes, it's in our head, but not in a flippant way. It is literally in our brain and in our nervous system. And if you look at this really cool scan, this amazing work is done by Dr. Vanya Apkarian, if I pronounce his name right, and his team in Northwest University on the brain and chronic pain. So these are research participants whose bodies recovered after an acute injury, yet some of them were left with chronic pain. And look at these images. So look at this. These are images of a person's brain who recovered and who doesn't have chronic pain. And this is an image of a person who maybe their fracture recovered, but they're still in pain, and you can see the chronic pain in the brain. So this shows that chronic pain is real pain. So we looked at acute and chronic pain, but let's dig a little bit deeper into the actual types of pain within acute and chronic pain. You see these brain scans, so you can actually see the chronic pain on the bottom right hand side. So when people say that the pain is in your head, well, yes, it is in the brain, and you can actually see how a person feels chronic pain in their brain. So let's look at the next slide. So we looked at acute and chronic pain, but let's dig deeper into the types of pain within and see what medical and non-medical treatments work for the different types of pain. So if you look at acute pain is a symptom of an illness or an injury, and acute pain can be two types. It can be either nociceptive pain, which is essentially a result of some sort of a tissue damage. So for example, a broken bone, menstrual cramps, appendicitis, surgery, or kidney stone or childbirth. And the other type of pain is neuropathic pain. So neuropathic pain is lesion of the somatosensory system. So for example, nerve compression, spinal compression, spinal cord injury, stroke, multiple sclerosis, or people with diabetes can feel neuropathic pain as well. The treatment for these type of pain is, for the medical treatments, the rest, ice compression, elevation, sometimes heat, paracetamol, non-steroid anti-inflammatory drugs, or anticonvulsants and antidepressants. Those last two mainly work for neuropathic pain. The paracetamol and the non-steroid anti-inflammatory, and sometimes opioids, they work for nociceptive pain. Now, when we talk about chronic primary pain is not a symptom, but it's more of a syndrome. So when the pain pathway from the sensory receptors, so do you remember that child with the nose? So from the sensory receptors through the spinal cord, and the brain is malfunctioning. And the chronic primary pain is caused by what's called nociplastic pain. So the International Association for the Study of Pain in 2019 said that nociplastic pain is altered nociception despite no clear evidence of actual or threatened tissue damage or lesion of the somatosensory system. This type of pain needs different treatment. Usually paracetamol, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and even opioids don't give long-term benefit for this type of pain, or don't give too much benefits. In fact, opioids on the long term can make the nociplastic pain worse. What really can help is antidepressants, because antidepressants, they work on the brain, and they help the desensitization. Also, specific psychological help that desensitizes the nervous system, that can very often help. And there's also research now, I don't have it here, where they have research participants, they put research participants at the start of therapy into an fMRI machine, and at the end of their 6-month, I think, weekly therapy, and it was amazing to see the difference in the brain. And I think the amygdala, which kicks off some of the pain response, was 2 millimeters smaller at the end of therapy and at the start. So psychological therapy specifically to help nervous system desensitization works. And also, obviously, lifestyle modification, exercise. Previously this was talked about, anti-inflammatory diet. But I know of myself, when you're in pain, the last thing you want to do is cook a healthy meal and, think about modifying your lifestyle. This is why psychological help can help with those aspects of getting better as well. So if you look at this picture, so these are the 3 types of pain: the nociceptive pain, neuropathic pain, and nociplastic pain. So they're each slightly different, and they need different treatments. But we can have mixed pain as well. I have been living with a post-traumatic arthritis for pretty much half my life. I remember times when I had all the three types of pain mixed, and that time was horrible. Now at this stage, because I have worked, with my orthopedic surgeon, and as well as, I suppose because of my job, I work on my mental health as well. I now only have the nociceptive pain. That's the sort of classic arthritic pain. So when I do too much, my joints flare up. Then I take some anti-inflammatories, I rest them, ice them, and I'm fine again. So I don't live with the type of chronic everyday pain that's 24/7. But I remember when I had the mixed type of pain, I lived with 24/7 pain. So why is pain different for everyone? Well, as I mentioned before, every single one of us is a beautiful combination of biological, psychological, and social factors that are ingrained in us at a cell level. And if we have a long-term health condition, for example, arthritis, combined with psychosocial characteristics, that can place an individual at elevated risk for the transition from acute to persistent pain, and for the development of potentially pain-related disability. So what are the biological factors? Well, biological factors are our genetic setup, our general health, and the condition of our body as well. The psychosocial factors, and I'm combining the psychological and the social factors here because they're very much interlinked. They're your social background, your relationships, what's happening around you, your experiences from the time you were little, whether or not you had any adverse child experiences. So maybe you lost a parent, or one of your parents was ill, or if a parent was in prison, or if there was, if you ever experienced any form of abuse. All of these things have an impact on us. And you can see the cycle, how all the biological, social, and psychological factors will then have an effect on the nervous system. So the nervous system is your brain, the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system. And then obviously that will then influence your physical health and the mental health as well. And it contributes to your pain threshold, pain tolerance, and your pain persistence. Meaning that some people will be exposed to chronic pain more. But again, if you live with pain, that will have an impact on your life and how you live. The unfortunate thing is that the healthcare systems still very much separate mental and physical health, even though the fact is that they are very much interrelated, and that both psychological and physical health at the end of the day are down to biology. So if we dig a little bit more deeper and look at the psychosocial factors of chronic pain. So the psychosocial factors can be grouped into two areas: the learned behaviors and the psychological distress. So if we look at the learned behaviors, beliefs, everyone has a fundamental belief system. They have a basic view of their self, which has a lot to do with the teachings that we received since the moment we were born. The emotional regulation and coping skills, they relate how a person manages and responds to an emotional experience. And communication style is how clearly we can communicate our feelings and our needs in a given situation, whether it's with our husband or with our GP or consultant or with our colleague. The psychological distress, it's obvious. If you live with pain, you're gonna have fear and worry, and in anticipation of pain. We can often feel helpless in reducing the pain, especially if you're told that, well, you have to learn to manage your pain. Obviously, we don't just want to manage, we want to get rid of the pain. Very often we have the inability to disengage from thinking about pain. Overthinking for people who live with a chronic condition and chronic pain, is quite natural. We can associate the pain with further health issues, with limitations, but also we can have psychological distress because of household challenges, just life stresses, relationship issues, maybe feeling lonely, as I said, adverse childhood experiences, grief, or any unresolved painful memories. So all of these psychosocial factors will make changes in our nervous system, and then the associated outcome is pain severity. We can have sleep disturbance, cognitive difficulties, for example, brain fog. We can feel exhausted and tired all the time. We can have mood changes. It can interfere in our relationships, activities, work, education. It can have financial consequences. And obviously then we can have even poorer medical prognosis, medical complications, and then potentially physical disability. And then all these outcomes will obviously have an impact on our psychological distress. So what is it that we can do? And why is it that some live well and others struggle with exactly the same condition? So if there is an external stimulus, it can be anything. It gives us thoughts, and those thoughts will give us feelings and emotions. Now, the thoughts are mostly unconscious, but there are conscious thoughts as well. And then we have feelings, and underneath those feelings is usually core emotions that we've been carrying with us for a longer time. And all those, if the feelings and emotions are quite uncomfortable, then we'll have biological changes in the body that can result in chronic pain and a chronic pain condition. And then what do? Well, we obviously then display behaviors to protect ourselves. So, for example, you get up in the morning after a night of disturbed sleep because you are tired and you feel achy and stiff in the morning, and then your first thought is, oh, it's not one of those days again. I have to, take the kids to school, and then I have to go to work, and I have to pretend that everything is fine. And then these thoughts of worry and frustration might have a deeper emotion of fear or maybe guilt under it. And then when we have these, why is it that the same external stimulus gives a million different thoughts and feelings to a million different people? The same external stimulus. It's because of the biopsychosocial filters. So that's our predisposition. So it's our memories, how we are in the moment, how much support we have around us. All of these influence how we think and how we feel about a certain situation. And if the feelings are negative, again, the biological changes will happen in the body, because the body aims for balance. To get this balance, the body then kicking the fight, flight, or freeze reflex, which is good if we're in real danger. But if the fight, flight, or freeze reflex is constantly activated on long term, it can cause chronic pain and chronic pain conditions. So what can we do? There's not much that we can do about the fact that, we all have arthritis. There's a lot of things that are out of our control, unfortunately. What we can control is how we respond to things. And what we can also control is, even to look at, what is in our control, and to remind ourselves that we always have something in our control. So if we look at the behaviors a little bit more, depending on the behavior, we can either go back and have similar thoughts and feelings and, somatic response in our body, or we can very often change it with little behavioral changes. And the reason why I'm focusing on the behavior is because, unfortunately, it's extremely difficult to change our thoughts and our feelings. I heard people who say, well, just don't think about, pain. Well, if you know how not to, give me a tip, because, I think it's very difficult not to think about pain when you're in real pain. But there are still some little behaviors that you can change. So when you feel pain, you won't be overthinking about pain. So going back to the behaviors, so when you have some sort of a stress or, pain, or you have a panic attack, or tense muscles and all that, you then display behavior. And usually, you behave in a way that you assume that protects you. And to cope with the pain, we often develop unhelpful coping behaviors that are essentially driven by fear, but it's absolutely understandable. And I mean, chronic pain, I suppose, it is very scary. And initially, we might want to cover up and not tell anyone about the condition, or we might want to keep up with friends or desperately look for a cure. We can dread the next flare up. We can, we can become very hyper vigilant, and the anticipation of increased pain and re-injury, and we can avoid putting ourselves into certain situations to avoid the pain, and we can get into the loop of overthinking. Also, chronic pain often becomes a way of life. It can be all consuming, between going to appointments and trying to get prescriptions on time, managing the various healthcare professionals. Dealing with pain can be a full-time job. And I remember when it was literally a full-time job for me, and it took a lot of mental, physical, and financial energy as well. And our whole identity can be wrapped up in this, and that at times it can be very difficult to see who I am without the pain. And also, chronic pain can be, in a very weird way, it can be isolating, but it can give social support. Social relationships can be hard when you're living in pain. But then when you see your GP or your physiotherapist or your consultant, then it's okay to feel tired. It's okay to feel off, because I don't feel bad. I'm not going to spoil their fun. They're working, when I tell them that I feel off and that I'm in pain. You can't do that with friends. But then, if we have really high hopes for our medical professionals to give us social support, we can get really disappointed if they don't give us the type of social support that we need. And obviously they won't, because they're professionals, they're not our friends. And maybe if our doctor is not as empathetic as we expect them to be, that can be really, really hurtful, and that it can give us the fear of rejection. So to help our chronic pain and overall physical and mental health, we need to develop helpful coping behaviors. And when I'm saying helpful coping behaviors, I'm certainly not saying that from tomorrow you have to, get up at 5 o'clock and do yoga and, all that. No, not at all. We just need to allow ourselves and our behaviors to be guided more by mindfulness, rather than being terrified and defeated. And so these helpful coping behaviors, I put them into 4 categories. So number 1 is the emotional coping. So emotional coping means that, we have to look at what is not in control. Life, unfortunately, throws things at us that aren't in our control. And we need to accept that there's some things that there's not much that we can do about. And we need to validate our feelings, because we can feel really awful and hurt, and that's okay. Obviously, it is okay. I used to be a very active, sporty person, and since I was involved in a really bad car crash, and I have post-traumatic arthritis and I have a serious structural damage in my legs, I'm not able to be as active, and that's hurtful and that's painful, and I have to validate my own feelings. And as part of emotional coping, we also have to look at what is it that we need, what are our values, and what kind of a life we want to live, so we're still happy. It might be a different life than I had planned for myself before, but I still want to enjoy my life and have a happy life. So that's the emotional coping part. We need to look at, possible lifestyle changes, to introduce maybe a bit more anti-inflammatory diet, try and regulate our sleep. Again, these things are ideals, but it's very difficult to do. And so, people often need psychotherapy and psychological help to be able to regulate their sleep cycle, to be able to help with their diet, and to be able to do, some of the lifestyle changes that will benefit their pain. Also, it's good to look at our communication skills and the kind of social support that we need and that we are getting and that we need to get. And it's good to have a look at our relationships as well. And in general, as helpful coping, we need to look at our psychological well-being and reduce stress. At the end of the day, stress gives us inflammation, and if we already have inflammation in our body because of rheumatoid arthritis, or osteoarthritis or whatever, we don't want the extra inflammation coming in with diet, with an inflammatory diet, or with extra stress. So if we look at the last slide, the psychological treatment of chronic pain. Well, in therapy, we identify the psychological and social factors that impact the body. And psychotherapy provides an environment to make sense of our experiences, past and current experiences, our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. And in therapy, we teach people strategies to be able to make lifestyle changes and to re-engage in everyday life, to cooperate with healthcare professionals, to exercise, to have a good enough diet, and to engage in intimacy as well. And therapy also helps to take control over your own life and change the focus. So you're not only focusing on the pain, but you're focusing on other things as well, and to find meaning to your life or to your new life. And then consequently, therapy will help to calm your nervous system and establish new, much less sensitive neural pathways. So your sensory nerves won't be as sensitive as previously, and also your brain will stop sending pain signals to your body. So essentially, therapy and making all these helpful coping behaviors and changes, it can lower the impact of pain and can reduce or even eliminate chronic primary pain. Now, with arthritis, we'll always have the secondary pain, but if you can take out a lot of the other pain, the chronic primary pain, at least I think you'll be doing very well. I see it on myself that, I'm doing so much better since I'm only dealing with the secondary pain. So this was it for me from tonight. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Okay, Laura, thank you so much for that. It was really, really interesting, and it definitely was a good recap of everything we've come from, and it was lovely to get the threads of everything we've covered, and seeing that the emojis coming, so that's a good sign. We have plenty of time for questions, I think, and there's a couple of questions here. Somebody has a question on antidepressants, because I know you mentioned antidepressants there. And their sort of comment or question is that antidepressants numb pain, but they can also numb everything else and are addictive. So that's this person's.
Yeah. And I'm not anti-antidepressants, but I don't think that I don't like seeing when clients are left on antidepressants for years. They have, with every medication, they have a place. And sometimes, people need antidepressants to be able to, even talk in therapy, they need the reduction of pain that's helped with the antidepressants initially to be able to work with, on lifestyle changes, and to be able to engage in therapy so they can desensitize their nervous system. So so I certainly wouldn't advocate, staying on antidepressants for life or for very long.
Yeah, and I think that's right, that as part of a treatment plan, sometimes people are so agitated or stressed or anxious that they need something to sort of, as you say, to slow down their nervous system, to get them to a place where they can slow down and then engage in therapy and support. So thank you.
And this is why
there's another question.
Sorry, this is why I would be such an advocate, and unfortunately we don't have it yet, for combined treatment. So when the psychologist and the doctor actually talks to each other, so it's not happening just yet.
It makes a lot of sense. That's right. Yeah, a holistic sort of whole person. Yeah. There's another question here on antidepressants. So when you talk about antidepressants for neuropathic pain, I presume you mean low dosage antidepressants. This person is on 20 milligrams of amlodipine for neuropathic pain.
Yeah, for neuropathic pain, of what, and I'm not a medical doctor, but of what I know and what my doctor explained to me when I had neuropathic pain, is that the old-fashioned tricyclic antidepressants, so for example, amitriptyline, which was initially developed as an antidepressant, but then they realized that it was really good for neuropathic pain as well.
Yeah.
That can help. And also SSRI, so there would be a newer type of antidepressants. Again, I don't know, sometimes people are left on these medications for very long. And I have personal experience with amitriptyline, and while it was effective, it knocked me out so much that I wasn't able to function, drive to work. And so that has a lot bigger, the side effects of the medication had a lot bigger impact on me than the actual pain. So, this is when we need communication skills and to talk to your doctor and to figure out what is the best treatment for us. But as a general rule of what I know, antidepressants, tricyclic antidepressants, and SSRIs do work for neuropathic pain. Sorry.
Great, thank you for that. Is a straightforward question, I think, for you. Where can you go to get psychological treatment for osteo? Is it AO? I think I'm assuming they mean OA.
Yeah.
And they live in Cork. Is that the one I would be thinking is the IACP website?
Okay, so there are not, as far as I know, that there are not too many psychologists, psychotherapists, and counselors who specifically work with chronic pain condition. Your best bet when you're looking for psychological therapy is to make sure that you go to an accredited person. So go to the IACP website, so the Irish Association for Counsellors and Psychotherapists, or you can go to the Psychological Society of Ireland's website as well. And then or else if you go to a website like Psychology Today, there will be listed accredited psychologists, psychotherapists, and counselors, and they will mention if they work with people who live with a chronic illness or chronic pain. So literally go to Psychology Today, look for a therapist in your area, and with the keyword put in pain, and then you'll find people.
Thank you. There's a couple of questions here that I'm not sure we can actually answer because they're related to diet and different types of treatment. There's somebody asking here about can you give examples of foods which give an increase or one that cause a decrease in inflammation? What I would be going is go back to week 4 of the series. Yeah. We had Dr. Elena Nikiforou who spoke about diet and inflammation. It's on the YouTube channel. And to be honest, I think that's the best answer I can give you.
Yeah, I mean, they're just, in general, what I'm hearing is that sugar, whereas if it's artificial sugar, or even fructose and preserved foods are, they're not very good for us. It doesn't matter if you live with chronic pain condition or not. For me personally, it's sugar and wheat that give me more inflammation. So I know that if I eat sugar and wheat, like I love ice cream. So one of my unhelpful coping behaviors is Ben and Jerry's ice cream. But I know that if I had Ben and Jerry's ice cream, I would be probably 3 times the size with rotten teeth, and I'd be in a lot of pain. So, I think everyone needs to find what is it that works for them. And also when we're, with the diet, I also want to say that, it's sometimes doctors and their communication skills, sometimes doctors can say, well, just lose weight, and in some ways, yes, they're right, but not completely. What the research says is that it's the amount of fat that we have in our body that can cause the extra inflammation, and that can make pain feel worse. Now, you can look at the person and they look thin, but they have a lot of body fat. So it's the fat. It's not necessarily, the size of the person that matters.
There's a question there on stem cell treatment, and I'm sorry, it's not really a question we can answer this evening. It's an opinion answer, and we had the rheumatology consultants on, and that's a question for them, so I'm not going to answer that. Okay. And somebody else is asking about it. Do we recommend a particular treatment? About the laser therapy. That's a physiotherapist question. That's beyond what we could answer, to be honest. If you want to go back to week 3 on exercise, Suzanne and Jennifer were talking about laser treatment for different types of arthritis as well, and it was good for OA and hands and feet. So maybe that's somewhere that could help. But there is a general question there, as a straight up, would you recommend seeing a psychotherapist?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say yes.
Yes. And I think, it's very easy for medical professionals to say, well, just be active, do exercise, lose a bit of weight. How to do it is very difficult, even for an average person. If someone lives with chronic pain, it's even more difficult. And psychological help and psychotherapy can give the space and the support for the person, so they will be able to regulate their sleep cycle, maybe move on to a bit healthier diet, maybe get involved in exercise, and also look at their relationships and their communication skills. So I think this is the reason. But I mean, I remember years and years ago when someone suggested, after my car crash, when someone suggested seeing a psychologist, and I was like, no, I'm fine, absolutely fine. But then, and we can also almost get offended, if someone relates our pain with emotional pain. But there is really good research that says that a heartbreak after a romantic relationship ends lights up exactly the same pain signals as a broken leg. So it just proves that, yes, emotional pain can have a huge effect on our body,
Absolutely. There's a great question here, and I think it'll probably be all 3 of us will probably jump in to answer it. Somebody's asking, is psychological therapy only available privately?
Yes and no. I know wonderful pain psychologists who work in Beaumont Hospital, in the Mater Hospital in Tala. But within the HSE, while the idea of it is great, and we have pain management clinics that are great, but they don't really have the time to give enough sessions. So from that point of view, I think it's a good start. But unfortunately, it's probably best to go to a private therapist.
Yeah. And that's specifically for, say, pain psychology. But just to let you know, Patricia, that the helpline is a listening ear. It's not counseling, but there is listening ear there to help and support, if you are in crisis or if you need somebody to talk to. And it's free. It's open Monday to Friday, 10 to 4. And everybody that's on the phone lives with arthritis, and they understand it. They won't be judging you, and they get it. It's not a case that they'll be out running a marathon in the morning and then going on to do a bit of volunteer work. It doesn't work like that. There's also free counselling available in some community centres, family resource centres, and different charitable organisations around the country. If you have a medical card, there would be free psychological services in all HSE areas. I can only imagine how long the waiting time would be. It's probably an average of at least 2 years. But most counsellors do have different rates that I think the average counsellor, depending if it's face-to-face or in person or in group or over the phone, could be anything from €50 to €80 and up. So, but you can also come up with a reduced rate. Say somebody's a student counsellor, or just waiting on their accreditation. I'm not saying they would be a lesser value or a lesser qualified person, but that they might just be charging less. So there are other options, Patricia, so that if you are interested in something like that, don't be thinking, oh, that's not available to me. It's also, you can get psychological therapies through VHI or Aviva or private health insurance. That if you do have that you can claim for that through your private health insurance, and that's always an option as well. And if you're in work, occupational health will have counselling services through work. So, you can go to your employer through Health and seek that as well. And that's a private confidential service, and it won't go on your medical file as, oh, you engaged in psychological therapies. It's something there for ongoing support to keep people in their work, to keep people healthy, and to keep people from harm, and that's what's important. And as I say, if anybody is in distress this evening or is really in crisis, there's always a Samaritans, lift the phone and talk to somebody if in doubt. Even if it's for a rant, even if it's just a sound off, if you're struggling emotionally, there are services there, and that's what I would be saying is, don't suffer in silence. Lift the phone and talk to somebody, okay? And if anybody is struggling tonight, feel free to contact Arthritis Ireland, as I say, on the helpline, or email the helpline. You don't have to lift the phone if you don't want to. But as I say, don't take it home, and don't keep it in the ears. Talk to somebody and reach out. Okay, I hope that answers your question, Patricia, and that there's options there for you. And as I say, if you're not happy with that, follow on and ring us tomorrow, okay? So somebody is asking there too, it's a direct question for you, Laura. Have you ever used acupuncture during your recovery time?
Initially, when I just wanted to find any fix to take away the pain, I went to an acupuncturist. Now I made sure that he's an acupuncturist, was also a medical doctor, and I was lucky enough. He told me that he's going to try acupuncture with me, but if after 5 sessions I don't feel the pain reducing, there's no point paying for more. And acupuncture didn't do anything for my
Yeah,
pain.
everybody, as you say, it's everybody, it's very individual, isn't it? What might work for you might not work for me, or might work for Peter, and it'll not work for somebody else. So it's definitely not a one size fits all. We're running out of time, so I'm just going to bring the end to the Q&A, and I'm sorry if I didn't get to answer everybody's questions this evening. We did our best, but time's against us. So I'm just bringing it to a close. Imagine bringing it to a close, our final piece on the final webinar. So my thing about all of this is, I mean, it's been a lovely journey, and I do hope that you got a lot from the webinar series. I hope it's been of benefit to you. I hope you learned loads. I hope you're putting it into practice, and that you're learning to live better and feel better. And as I say, everything is on the YouTube channel. So if there's anything there that you missed over the last couple of weeks, because I know there were food questions there, I would say go back and see Dr. Elena Nikki Farou's presentation, because some of the information there was really interesting. Same for the exercise one. There's really good information there, and on some of the treatment questions that we had tonight, the girls answered those questions. Just on the next steps, we are in November, so we're busy planning already for next year. And what I would be saying is that we're opening our waiting lists. So contact us. If you want to start, looking at courses for next year, we'll be starting our programs in January. So just feel free to training at arthritisireland.ie or community@arthritisireland.ie to register for Living Well with Arthritis, or Living Well with Pain programs, or adapted exercise programs, and our mental health program Behind the Pain. As always, just to remind you of the membership and signing up for our e-zine, which is as all things arthritis and all things activities and what's going on, and our Mindful Mondays bi-monthly blog, which is full of useful tips and hints, and how to keep mind our health and well-being. And if anybody is out exercising or traveling or commuting or anything, our Inflammation Nation podcast is a really interesting series of talks, and it's an information series of all things related to arthritis and treatments and trends and various conditions and whatever. And also all our patient information booklets are on the website. And as I say, we've loads of videos on the YouTube channel. So if there's anything there that you are interested in. Before I forget, I want to thank Vernicius Cabby for the support of the webinar series. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do it at all. And really, it just, thank you all so much for attending and for watching and for tuning in. and for everybody involved in the webinar series of making it happen and making it possible, from all our speakers to everybody that was involved in supporting it and trying to get the whole content together and everything, and the comms department for doing a great job. And it's been really good, and I hope, thank you all thank you all so much for your time every week, and keep watching, keep going back over, and if there's any threads of anything that are of interest to you here, check out YouTube and check out our video series. So if you are living with RA or OA, there's a video there that you can find out loads more, and that's what I would say. Keep learning, keep going, and thank you all so much. And Laura, thank you so much for tonight and giving of your time and your knowledge and your compassion and your insight. Thank you. And thanks, Peter, for your support this evening too.